He told me once that I was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen and that he was so lucky to be my husband. I remember that because I think that was the first time I actually believed him. My name is Allison, and I'm 31. It started a few years ago. We were doing really well. Ryan had his job as a foreman at a construction company, and I was happy with my design work. We were married for 3 years and together for 6. Everything was predictable. We had our routines. We'd get up, have coffee, go to work, come home, cook dinner together, watch a show, and go to bed. It was nice, and it was comfortable, and I guess that's where the problem started. My best friend, a guy named Carter, had always been a big part of my life. I've known him since we were kids. He's the kind of guy who can make you laugh until you cry. He's also the kind of guy who knows exactly what to say to make you feel like the most interesting person in the room. Ryan was a little more reserved. He was a man of action, not words. When I'd tell him about a problem at work, he'd just nod and say, "That's rough," and then move on to asking what I wanted for dinner. Carter, on the other hand, would dissect it with me, and we'd talk for hours about it. I started spending more and more time with Carter. We'd go out for drinks after work and talk about everything and nothing. I'd come home and feel energized. And Ryan would be on the couch, watching a sports game, and the energy would just disappear. He never complained. He just let me do my thing. I think that's what bothered me the most. He was so accepting, so okay with everything, that it felt like he didn't care. One night, Ryan and I were at a mutual friend's birthday party. Everyone was having a good time, but I was bored. Ryan was in a deep conversation with one of his coworkers about a project they were working on. I went to find Carter, and we ended up in a corner of the room, just laughing and making jokes. At one point, I put my hand on his arm and said something I can't even remember now, and he just looked at me with this intensity. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me, and I felt a pull, a spark I hadn't felt in a long time. Ryan came over a few minutes later, grabbed my hand, and said, "Ready to go home, honey?" I just smiled and said, "Yeah, let's go." For the next few weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about that look from Carter. It felt like a secret between us. I started texting him more, and our conversations got more and more flirty. He'd say things like, "Wish I was there to make you laugh," or, "You have no idea how much I think about you." I'd just smile at my phone, and Ryan would look over and ask, "Everything okay?" I'd always say, "Yeah, just talking to my mom." And he'd just nod and go back to what he was doing. It felt so easy to lie to him because he was so trusting. Then came the business trip. Ryan had to go to Dallas for a week. He was excited about it, and so was I. Not for him, but for myself. The day he left, I felt a sense of freedom. I went to the store, bought a bottle of wine, and called Carter. He came over, and we just sat and talked for hours. The conversation was easy, and the wine was flowing. He was telling me about a new project he was working on, and I was just listening, hanging on to every word. He reached across the table and took my hand. He held it for a moment, and I didn't pull away. He said, "You know, I've always thought you were too good for him," and I didn't say anything. I didn't argue with him. I just let it hang in the air. That night, things got blurry. I woke up the next morning with Carter sleeping on my couch, and I felt a wave of guilt. But it was quickly replaced by something else, something I couldn't quite name. It was like I had just done something exhilarating. I made him leave before Ryan was due to call me later that morning. When Ryan called, he asked, "How's your first night alone?" And I said, "It was quiet. I miss you." I felt a little sick saying it, but I just pushed the feeling down. The rest of the week was a blur of phone calls with Ryan where I'd lie, and nights with Carter where I'd pretend I wasn't married. I had this idea in my head that I wasn't cheating. I was just exploring. It wasn't physical every time, but the emotional affair was just as real, if not more. Carter was giving me the attention I felt I deserved, the one I felt like Ryan wasn't giving me. The night Ryan was coming home, I felt a knot in my stomach. I cleaned the house, cooked his favorite meal, and put on the dress he liked. I was trying to be the perfect wife, to cover up the mess I had made. When he came home, he kissed me and said, "I missed you so much." He smelled like the cologne he only wore on special occasions, and I hugged him back, feeling the distance between us. The man he was now felt like a stranger, not because he had changed, but because I had. Things went back to normal, or what I thought was normal, but everything felt different. The routines that were once comforting now felt stifling. Ryan would try to talk to me about his day, and I'd just nod, my mind somewhere else. I was waiting for a text from Carter, or for the phone to ring. The lies were a constant wait. But I had convinced myself that it was all for a good reason. I was finally feeling alive again, and I couldn't go back to the way things were. Ryan started noticing the change in me. He'd ask, "Is everything okay?" Or, "You seem a little distant." I'd always brush it off, saying I was just tired from work. I saw the worry in his eyes, but I ignored it. I was in too deep now. I couldn't stop. I had to see where this was going to go. The climax happened on a Friday night. Ryan and I were having dinner, and my phone buzzed. I picked it up, and it was a text from Carter. "Thinking of you. Can't wait to see you again." I felt my heart drop. I quickly put the phone down and tried to pretend like nothing happened, but it was too late. Ryan had seen the text. He didn't say a word. He just picked up my phone and opened the messages. His face didn't drain of color or go blank. He just looked at the messages, and then he looked at me. His eyes were full of something I had never seen before. Not anger, not sadness, but a deep, profound disappointment. He put the phone down, pushed his chair back, and said, "I'm not going to sit here and pretend that this is okay. I'm going to my mom's." I just sat there, frozen. I didn't try to stop him. I didn't say anything. I let him walk out the door. He didn't have a suitcase. He just had his car keys. The house felt so empty after he left. I was alone with my thoughts. And for the first time, I felt the full weight of what I had done. I called Carter, and he came over. He held me and told me that everything was going to be okay, and that I deserved better than a man who couldn't handle a little emotional freedom. He was saying all the right things, all the things I wanted to hear, but it all felt empty. A few days later, Ryan called me. He was calm, almost too calm. He said, "I want to meet up and talk." We met at a public place, a park near our house. He didn't look at me with anger. He just looked tired. He said, "I want a divorce." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had expected a fight, yelling, and anger, but not this. Not this quiet, final resignation. I tried to argue, to say that we could fix this, but he just shook his head. He said, "I can't be with someone who can do what you did. I can't trust you anymore." He stood up and walked away. And that was it. After the divorce was final, I moved in with Carter. I had this idea that everything would be perfect now. I had the man who made me feel alive, the man who understood me. But living with him was different. He wasn't the romantic, witty guy from our late-night texts. He was messy, he was lazy, and he was critical. He'd make comments about my clothes or my weight. He'd make me feel small. I missed Ryan's quiet, steady love. I missed the way he would just look at me and make me feel like I was the most important thing in the world. A few months later, I saw Ryan at the local coffee shop. He was with a woman. She was beautiful, and she was laughing at something he said. He looked so happy, so relaxed, and so content. He looked at me, and his eyes were completely empty. There was no pain, no anger, just a simple acknowledgement of a stranger. I walked out of the coffee shop, and for the first time, I felt it, a deep, hollow pit in my stomach. The regret wasn't for what I had done, but for what I had lost. I had traded a life of comfort and love for a cheap imitation, and I was left with nothing but the mess I had made. Carter and I eventually broke up. I packed my stuff and moved into my own little apartment. I was alone, and I was bitter. I'd see pictures of Ryan and his new girlfriend on social media, and I'd feel a spike of anger. He was happy, and I wasn't, and I blamed him for it. I blamed him for being so boring, for not fighting for me, for being so trusting. I never once considered that I was the one who had made the choices, the one who had thrown it all away. I was the victim, and everyone else was to blame. I was left with a life I didn't want, and I had no one to blame but the man who was too good for me and the friend who was never as good as I thought he was.